Welcome to another edition of TokStocks. I'm your host, Keir Reynolds, and today we're lucky enough to have Kelly Malcolm, President and CEO for Borealis Mining, here with us today. Trades with the ticker on the TSX Venture Exchange, BOGO. BOGO. Buy one, get one. It's a great ticker. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, thanks. Thanks for having me on. Glad to be here and meet your audience. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you. I've heard a bit about your company, and then a person from my past there, Lizana, who's your CFO, and has been with this sort of project for a long period of time. I knew her probably back in 2006-07. Anyways, just a wonderful person. So it was nice to see her name in your presentation deck.
Yeah, she's top notch. We're lucky to have her.
Hey, awesome. Why don't we get our 60-second pitch out of the way, if that's all right?
Great.
First question. It's an easy one. What's the name and stock ticker of your company?
Borealis Mining, TSXV, BOGO, BOGO.
What's the approximate market cap today?
$60 to $65 million Canadian as we speak.
What's the mission and vision for the company?
Become a mid-tier mining company. Look to grow and develop and deliver ounces in and around Nevada.
How many shares are outstanding approximately?
83.3 million as of today.
And what's the approximate insider ownership?
16 or so percent. If you include Rob McEwen, who also owns another 16%, that number jumps quite dramatically.
Are you fully funded for the next 12 months?
We are financed, yes, indeed, and we are revenue generating as well. So we do pour gold and are looking to recover some money from the refinery from that.
Hey, excellent. And last question, what are some short-term catalysts that investors should be on the lookout for?
Drill results, gold pour results. We are, and we can talk about it later on, we're working on some M&A activity, so hope to see some deals throughout the next year or so. And those are the three main facets: drilling, production, and mergers, acquisitions.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much for answering those. You kept to a good amount of time there. So maybe, Kelly, a bit about your professional background. How'd you get started in the business? How'd you get to where you are today?
Sure. So originally I went to university for economics. I didn't love it. Went back to school a bit later on for geology after putting money into some penny stocks in the mining industry. One of which was Trelawney Mining, which eventually went from about 10 cents where I started playing, hit a high of $5 or so. So I did really well on that and got really excited about the prospects of the industry. My broker friend took me to PDAC in Toronto, and I met this really cool geologist who was working in Africa. He told me about his career, what he was doing, and I came home and signed up for adult high school chemistry, physics, calculus. And that's how the career trajectory started. So I'm a geologist by profession with a bit of background in finances.
Excellent. And what are some past successes sort of in the mining sector that you've had prior to being involved here with Borealis and leading it?
Sure. So I lucked out. I got a really good student job and then a really good job out of university at Detour Gold, which is the biggest gold mine in Canada, will be for the next few decades, I imagine. But I was involved on the exploration side, and we made a discovery. On my first ever gig, within about a year of working, we had identified a new high-grade gold deposit. So got to see that process from start to finish very early on in my career. That's called the 58 North Zone. Following that, went into the junior world for a bit, helped out some finance firms, and got to know the capital market side of things a bit more, and then took on a role at Amex Exploration as the VP Exploration. That company, we made some fantastic gold discoveries there. I recently put out a PEA on the discoveries that were made under my tenure there that show really strong economics and looks really robust. And stock has performed admirably from pre-discovery to present date.
Excellent. And how did you get involved with Borealis? Were you part of the founding team?
I am the founding team. Yeah. So at MX, once we had really determined that it was a mine, I started wanting to look for different things. And through that job, I had made wonderful connections with the banking industry, capital markets industry, financiers, etc. And just wanted to do my own company. So started looking for assets, looked at a ton, found Borealis, along with our current COO, Andreas Steckenborn, we were also assisted by our VPX, who was Ian Campbell, and some finance friends that I have in Toronto that all of us kind of put it all together, put the board together following that, and then went and raised some money with some really good people. So yes, I put the deal together.
Excellent. And when did it go public, and how did it go public?
Public August 7th via reverse takeover. We acquired the asset in April of 2023, and it was a very lengthy process to get this thing live. It wasn't until August 2024 that we actually got it public. That was done via a reverse takeover with a number company shell. That is escrowed, so nice, clean, easy transaction to go public.
Excellent. And now, can you give us a bit of an overview on what Borealis Mining is all about? Like, what do you have? Where are you located? You mentioned earlier you're looking to be an emerging gold producer, and that you do have some revenue from some gold production or gold pouring of gold. I was reading some news releases. So why don't you give us a good overview on the company?
Sure. So we're a bit unique to the TSX Venture in that we are revenue generating. There are very few. I wouldn't call us money making at this moment, but hopefully in the future. But very few actual revenue generating TSX Venture listed gold companies. So we are set apart in that regard because we have a fully permitted mine, fully permitted Heap-Leach pad, fully permitted ADR facility, which is, for your listeners who don't know, an ADR facility is where you process and pour doré bars or gold bars. So yeah, we have that. We're generating revenue at the moment from dominantly residual leaching, although we are introducing fresh cyanide onto portions of our leach pad. And the plan coming up in terms of production is we've got a large stockpile on the property. We intend to crush that in the very near term, stack that on the pad, generate revenue, and then ideally resume production at some point in 2025 on a full-time, full-scale basis.
What would full-scale production look like? How many ounces would you be looking to target in annual production?
So the tricky thing about that is the resource is from 2011. It's part of the pre-feasibility study that was done in 2011 as part of the financing package, basically, that was done to build the mine, permit it all, and get all the equipment and infrastructure that's on site. We wanted to update that when we did our listing. It was quite complex because we would have had to do a lot of drilling ahead of it because the drilling was considered dated, although arguably it was done between 2006 and 2011. So you can be your own judge of whether or not that's historical or not. So we made the decision to just go ahead and list without the updated resource. Challenge there is that it's really difficult for me to forecast gold production because we don't actually have any current reserves.
Gotcha.
So the plant is capable of doing about 60,000 ounces per annum. And we're going to look at doing a much smaller production profile than Griffin Gold was planning to do. They were looking to do 60 to 100 a year. We're looking to go very low OPEX, CAPEX, and minimize all-in sustaining costs. And ideally maximize free cash flow.
Just in terms of an overview, so is it called the Borealis Mine? Is that really your main current project? Do you have any other projects beyond that?
That is what we have at the moment. The Borealis Mine and the surrounding exploration package. We are quite keen on expanding, looking for ounces. We're not looking for grassroots early stage projects where we have to take the risks. We think that there's really great opportunities out there that potentially merge with Borealis could be very high value and high impact for shareholders of Borealis and potentially additional companies that we look at as well. Because on many times 1 + 1 does equal 3. And I think in this market, if you can show a vehicle that is able to finance, has reasonable liquidity, and has a good shareholder base, I think that you can build quite a good company, particularly in this kind of iffy gold market.
Excellent. And so you were mentioning kind of doing things kind of on a lower sort of like CapEx. Again, you're probably restricted on what you can sort of say, but is there anything that you are able to say when you talk about that? Is that, or do you have any sort of like stated sort of like published sort of goals, costs or things like that?
Unfortunately, we don't. We are looking to. Well, what I certainly will say is that we're looking for as little upfront capital costs as possible. Looking to minimize strip ratio and maximize grade. So, if you can envision what that could look like, let's say you have a bowl. You're not necessarily going to be taking all of the material in the middle of it, because you want to minimize how much ore you have to push back. And oftentimes in these types of systems, the higher grade material sits right along the faults, and then the lower grade material sits peripheral to that. So we're running internal plans, but until we get that statement updated, we're just going to be looking at financials essentially as they're produced or as they're announced.
Excellent. And are you looking to model this company off of any other sort of examples of any other sort of notable companies that, have come before you?
100%. So we've got some wonderful mentors in publicly in this company, which are Rob McEwen, who's our major shareholder, and someone else that built a similar kind of company in the past is our board member Bob Buchan. So Kinross Gold Corp was built essentially through acquisition. Yes, they did quite a lot of exploration, but that was a number of different companies stitched together, projects stitched together, and through his tenure, it was I think a single or dual asset company when he first went public with it in the 80s. By the time he retired, it was the 6th largest gold company in the world. Rob McEwen, look at what he did there with Goldcorp, quite similar. He they drilled into the Red Lake mine, which was an absolute cash cow, which gave them a significant head start. But Goldcorp was a company also that was very big on profit margins and growth through M&A as well as through the drill bit. So those would be two great ones. In our presentation, we've also got what I think is a really neat playbook, which is Glamis Gold. And Glamis was sold in around 2008, I believe. But through the late 80s and 90s, they were consolidators of small projects that had good margins and low capex. They did that over and over again, looking to generate as much free cash flow as possible for as little money as possible. And that resulted in I think it was an $8 billion takeover by Goldcorp in that 2008 time period. There's a little case study if your listeners want to take a look at the back of our slide in the appendix that shows the value of these free cash flow and not necessarily huge assets.
What are some of the next major milestones for you as a company?
Big ones for me will be, without question, the big one will be resumption of production. A lesser one, but still quite important as it sets the stage for that, is the resumption of crushing. It sets kind of our baby step into full-on production and blasting and mining and all that fun stuff. We're going to kick off a really significant regional exploration campaign probably in the summer of 2025 at Borealis. What we've been drilling lately is largely confirmatory and expansionary drilling on known gold zones. When we bought the property, we got terabytes and terabytes and boxes and file cabinets full of data. So we spent about a year compiling all of that. It's now largely I think we've got 95% of all of our drill logs fully digitized, but we're almost at the position now where we've got it all in front of us and can make some really responsible decisions about where we want to best spend our dollars and exploration efforts. But we will kick off a big exploration campaign in the middle of 2025. And then, like I said, the M&A stuff, I think, is a milestone that I certainly want to achieve. and show the market and our shareholders our plan and growth trajectory. There's a few.
Sounds good. Oh, hang on a sec. I'm getting hmm. Anyway, sorry. I switched to a new computer recently. We're having a few little issues. Anyways, all good. It's recording.
Great.
Now, just before I ask the next question, you guys have like largely like an oxide resource, but then there's also like a deeper sulfide, and you've recently had some drill results on some of this sulfide. The grades would be like significantly higher. Is that some of the exploration upside?
Yeah, so that one it's really interesting. There is a quite a large component of that 2011 historical resource that is in sulfide mineralization. And to be honest with you, as an explorationist, what I was really intrigued about when I first looked at this were those historical drill holes, which are really strong grades over very large widths. So that's something for down the line. Certainly, you'd want to exploit the oxide mineralization prior, because metallurgically it's very simple. You just crush it, put it on the leach pad, and sprinkle literally with sprinklers and cyanide. You can recover that gold. The sulfide mineralization, of course, is much. It's more complex. Requires some milling. Requires some additional treatment to get the gold out. But we do think that there is a path down the line for us to recover some good value out of that mineralization.
Excellent. And you mentioned sort of you've got some network and stuff to do. Do you have any like refractory sort of ore issues, or are you going to have to roast for some of the sulfide type stuff, or is that something that you
Absolutely,
right.
we do have to, yes. In terms of deleterious elements in our oxide, it's really just mercury, and we have what's called a mercury retort system in our facility. So we remove all of that ahead of processing. But yeah, to do the sulfide mineralization, there's really two ways that you could reasonably and effectively process that material. One of which is you float it. So you run it through a flotation circuit, make a concentrate of sulfide, and then ship that off to one of the roasters in and around Nevada. The other way that you could do it is through oxidation on site. So there's many different ways: bio-oxidation, pressure oxidation, etc. So you could, if we build a large enough body, or identify a large enough body with the economic metrics to support it, we could potentially look at building some sort of oxidation facility at Borealis. And that would be probably the lowest cost way, although the CapEx would be much more substantial. So there's always a trade-off between the two, right?
Do you plan on upgrading any sort of 43-101 sort of like resources? You mentioned before you have a historic and you can't really sort of like utilize that because it was done by a previous operator, and I guess 2006-11 they're saying is too old. Are you planning to sort of upgrade it under your own sort of company, or are you really just focused on being an emerging gold producer?
No, we will at some point. It's going to take. We've got to go basically drill on each of the deposits, which it's a fair bit of work. And there's not that much of a need to go do it for us in terms of our immediate business needs, other than updating a resource statement, which is not required by the TSXV at the moment. But we do want to do it at some point soon. What I'd love to do is make some sort of new discovery. That would be a dream, and then update it all concurrent with that. But certainly within the next, it's hard to put a real timeline on it, within the next 18 to 24 months, I absolutely would like to have a statement out to the market. But no immediate plans to do it here.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier that you've poured some gold. Could you walk us through that? How many gold pours have you done? What sort of, do you have any recovery? Like how many ounces you might be recovering? Is it just gold? Are there any secondary sort of metals as well?
Yeah. So since we acquired the asset, we've done a number of pours. I believe we did 2 in since acquisition, 2023. So far since listing, we've announced 2. Another one is on its way. We're trying to determined gold content. So basically what we do is we pour this doré. The doré is not anywhere close to what you think of, or you've probably seen this, but certainly your audience wouldn't necessarily all know that it's not anywhere close to what you think of as pure gold or even 10 karat gold. It's like 3 karat gold. So the material that we've poured, it ranges anywhere from about 10% gold content up to kind of a high historically at Borealis of about 40 to 45%.
Okay.
That depends on a number of things, the grade of material that you're leaching, what else is associated with that ore. The other significant component oftentimes is silver. And we'll pick up things like copper, certainly iron, and really any other metals that would be mobile within a cyanide solution. But what we'll do is we'll pour those bars, or hopefully a multitude of bars, but at least a bar. And then we go and take it to our lab, and we drill a little sample in the bar. We take that sample of drill cuttings, send it off to an external laboratory. They'll report back to us what the estimated gold content is throughout that bar. And that's what we've reported to date. Beyond that, what will happen is we'll send it to a refiner, and the refiner will then determine the absolute gold content, the absolute silver content, and essentially pay us cash for that material. But it's really quite something as an exploration geologist to have our own mindset where we're pouring gold bars it's pretty amazing.
And are you looking to generate revenue from those gold pours? And have you generated any revenue so far? Or?
We absolutely have. So we filed our 2020 our year-end financials. Our financial year end is July 31st. So we filed those actually last Friday. We did report some revenue of about $1 million US from some of this residual leaching. In a very forward-looking statement, that number should be much higher for the next year because there's a lot more activity going to and from the leach pad.
Excellent. Sounds good. Thanks for that. Why don't we turn our attention to cap table? How many shares do you have outstanding? And maybe you could walk us through again insider ownership and any strategics, institutions, what percentage of flow might be in retail?
Sure. So there's 83.3 million shares outstanding, 16 point something million warrants outstanding, all of which are exercisable at 75 cents, all of which come due in September of 2025. There's about 4 million other dilutables. That includes options and a small amount of RSUs. Of the 83.3 million shares that are issued, a little less than half of them are escrow. So anything really that was early paper, cheaper stock is locked up on what's called a drip basis for 36 months to allow the company some room to breathe and grow and hopefully flourish. In terms of insider ownership, it's around 14 or 15% at the moment. I personally own about just under 5%, I believe, at the moment. The biggest holder of the company is Rob McEwen, who holds about 16% of the stock. Other notable shareholders would be Eric Sprott, and then there's a number of gold-focused institutions that own very big positions as well.
What were the terms of your last financing?
We raised in several tranches ahead of going public. We did a 50-cent unit. So this was $16 million that we raised at a 50-cent unit with a half warrant at 75 cents that expires in September of 2025.
In terms of the Borealis mine, do you own that 100%, or are there ongoing payments that you have to make?
So we own 100% subject to, there's a royalty encompassing the mining lease, which is surrounding the main area of up to 5%. There is a 2% royalty on the balance of the property. So new discoveries are less costly to us to mine. So we're certainly excited about the prospects outside of the mining lease. And we've got some pretty far-reaching future milestone payments. If we hit the goals, I'll be very, very happy to pay the milestones. Essentially, if we find better than 2.8 million ounces of underground mineable sulfide ore, so I can mine all I want in an open pit. This is only related to underground type mineralization. If we get a permit for that underground mine, and if we commercially produce, those are the three triggers. We'll have to pay the vendor, who was Waterton, $15 million. But honestly, if I find a 2.8 million ounce high grade underground mine in Nevada, that's worth a lot of money. So it's really it's on our books at like a value of like $1,300 for the $15 million liability, because it's quite far reaching at this point. If we're very successful in our exploration campaign, of course, that number, that liability will increase in expected value. But right now, it's a pretty outside possibility, particularly in that we're focused largely on oxide Heap-Leach ounces.
No, you're a bit handcuffed in what you're able to say to the viewers here, because you don't have an upgraded sort of 43101, and you have to be careful of forward-looking statements. We don't want to get anybody in trouble. But in terms of you mentioned you did about $1 million of revenue for your last sort of fiscal, and that you would say that that should be much higher sort of moving forward. What are you able to say so that we have some sort of like idea of what this company is going to kind of do? You're not just an exploration company. You have a heap leach operation. I believe it's fully permitted, if I'm not mistaken, on your heap leach, and so there is an ability to sort of ramp up production. What are you able to say in terms of that, and what should investors? How should investors sort of quantify it?
It is tough to stay away from overly forward-looking statements, because we don't have a formal mine plan, which we would have if we had an active feasibility study in place. So we don't have an external mine plan. We're working on our own internals.
Is this something we should just watch for on a quarterly basis?
Yeah, let's watch for an update. Our real, once we start the crushing here, that's when you'll get a real handle. Up until then, it's kind of residual leaching, which isn't really going to drive much. It'll bring in better than what we did last year, but I can't really forecast how much exactly that'll be.
All right.
But once the crushing starts, that's when real revenue starts rolling in. You'll get to see an idea of what our throughput's going to look like. Unfortunately, I can't say all that much right now.
That's okay. Is there, an idea that over the next couple of years you're looking to become a profitable mining company, or are you looking to take the revenues and the margin you generate from that and plow it into funding some of your exploration?
So I expect that we'll generate free cash flow from the Borealis mine in the coming years. Will we genuinely make a profit? I doubt it, because we are looking to grow, and growth requires capital expenditures. But we do want to be a profitable company in the future, and we're trying to set ourselves up over the next 3 to 5 years to have all those assets, ideally with some increased and enhanced production. But again, that's a pipeline for future growth.
Sure.
If we only focused on the Borealis asset, yes, of course, I would like to become a profitable operation and take some of those profits and put them into exploration. But we're thinking a bit bigger than that. We've got a really wonderful board of directors that are mining focused and have built large companies in the past. And we're certainly looking to do the same with BOGO.
So, is it? Can we, say that you mentioned earlier M&A is part of your strategy? So you're looking beyond just the Borealis mine, and you're looking to be a multi-asset sort of, again, taking on sort of smaller scale sort of producing mines that hopefully would add up to becoming a mid-tier sort of gold producer over the next bunch of
Yeah,
years?
you nailed it. And we are looking at smaller assets for a few reasons. Number one, large assets command large valuations and large takeover prices. There's just not that much of a market. A buyer, there's not many buyers for things under, call it, 1 million ounces. Like they're just not that many people out there for that. But there's some wonderful projects run by some wonderful people, and within some producers and in private hands. There's a multitude of assets out there. And as you know, if you've been watching the market and playing the game for a while, these things go up for a little bit, and then the size of the prize is announced, and then they kind of, unless there's robust economics, sometimes they can just fall back and get dusty. And there's lots of those out there in the market, particularly from kind of whatever didn't get scooped up in that 2008 to 2012 run. There's a lot of assets out there that were identified that have some really interesting potential to become cash generating mines. So,
And so you've got a pipeline of those sort of opportunities, and would they be in like similar jurisdiction or just globally, all over the place?
right now, so the reason that these so small, there's the Rick Rule has a good saying that small mines have the same amount of headaches as large mines, but large mines can make a lot more money. That's true if you have to, if your small mines have to pay for the entirety of your G&A profile. If you're able to run several different operations under a single G&A umbrella, you have the potential to really drop that all-in sustaining cost, and potentially, if you can use one managerial group, you can really bring down those costs. And what we're looking to do is look around Nevada. We look a bit elsewhere, Idaho, California, Arizona type thing. But really just within a kind of drivable distance of Borealis. And particularly when you look at smaller heap-leachable projects, a lot of the CapEx, when you look at these assets, is attributed to building electrical infrastructure and building an ADR facility. If you remove those two, let's say you ran a diesel-operated heap-leach project, you can ship, and it's not toll milling because you're not shipping whole ore. You basically run a little heap-leach operation on each of those different sites you're looking at, and then Borealis is able to take the carbon that gets loaded from the heap-leaching operation, bring it into our ADR facility, pour doré, and bring down those costs, like I said, quite significantly. So there's lots of really interesting things out there, in, like I said, producers' hands, private prospectors or private companies' hands, and in the public markets as well, looking at junior companies.
Hey, excellent. Maybe let's turn our attention to maybe the macro talk. So precious metals, gold. Gold's had a pretty good run this year. Obviously, recent sort of election. It's been a little softer, but it's had was up about 40% on the year. So that's pretty game-changing sort of numbers. If you told me that we're going to be, 2,700 gold, 5 years ago, I would have said, no, you're lying.
Yes.
It's phenomenal. But what are your thoughts in terms of the macro picture on gold?
So yeah, the main one is people are like, well, gold's soft. Gold is not soft. It is ripping. It's strong. I think it's performing well above inflation. I think it's still got lots of legs, owing to inflation. And I had an interview the other day where we talked about this, but sadly, it's a store of value in uncertain times, and not like I don't like this about the metal, but it's an unfortunate truth, is bad geopolitical events result in an increased gold price. Good geopolitical events drop that price. Unfortunately, I think we're living in a pretty uncertain time economically, inflationarily, interest rate wise, across the board, conflict wise. There's a lot of weird things going on. And it wasn't really until the last 2 years that really that it's been kind of a strange place in the world for a while, and you haven't seen gold go, and everyone's like, well, this is going to happen, and wait for the big rip. It's finally started ripping, and I think people are paying attention to it. So I'm a big believer. My portfolio rises and falls pretty steadily with the price of gold and the market. And I really think that the big picture is that gold stocks have absolutely not caught up to the rise in gold prices yet.
And what about any thoughts industry wise in terms of like consolidation, M&A? Are you think, have you noticed any themes with companies that have been performing well? Anything that they might have in common versus, I guess, versus the have nots? Anything else you can sort of like comment on being an ultimate better in the sector?
Sure. I all in sustaining cost is king. That's our company's mantra. Is when you look at like revenues are great, ounces produced are great, but really it's the amount of money you make per ounce that ultimately matters, right? You look at the Newmont earnings from, I don't know, that was a month ago or so, and the stock was decimated because people expected that, of course, they were going to make the most money they've ever made. They produced the most gold they've ever produced, but it ultimately didn't correspond to that significant increase in free cash flow. Where you look at an Agnico Eagle, who's very, very cost conscious, they're performing exceptional. You look at someone like Silvercrest Metals, who outperformed their feasibility study by, I think their payback period was meant to be a year or two. They paid it back in, like, I think it was 3 or 4 months. So cost conscious operators, I think, will be the way of the future. And I think like a company like Agnico will end up being one of the bigger market cap gold companies once the general sector comes in and starts looking at balance sheets versus where all of us gold bugs look at ounces produced in terms of the biggest and the best, right? I think that the generalist looks a lot more at looks at financial performance over necessarily ounce production. So
Right. Hey, what's a typical day in the life of a CEO like yourself? What's a typical day look like right now?
for me, honestly, it's bizarre. I live in Toronto. I've been really marketing the story because it is brand new. But honestly, I think we've done a pretty good job getting our name out there. It's a relatively not well known, but I can go to conferences and say the name and like, oh yeah, Borealis, I saw that. It's doing well. Or that's a great thing to hear, particularly on a news story. So I do a lot of pounding the pavement, visiting bankers, brokers on the phone quite a lot. I'm in Nevada quite often. Honestly, before we were public, I was there much more often. Since we went public 3 months ago, sadly, I've been able to go a lot less. Right now, I'm in my office in Toronto. We've got our CFO here. We're looking at some financial stuff today. Had a call with the guys on site this morning. Looked at some exploration ideas. Looked at some site stuff. So really, it's a really mixed bag. But honestly, it's a wonderful job, and I'm working with a wonderful group of people, and that really makes the really makes it worth doing. It's
Excellent.
great to work with good people.
Well, why don't we sort of close off here? Any maybe you can give sort of a final pitch. Why should we consider investing in your shares today?
Sure, fully permitted, wonderful board of directors and shareholder base, really young and hungry management team that is invested heavily in looking for some successes. Fully permitted mine, revenue generating, and we're looking to grow. And that's going to be done through production, through the drill bit, and through mergers and acquisitions. That's Borealis in a nutshell.
Hey, excellent. Any final messages or thoughts you want to leave us with outside of that?
No, I think that's great. Wishing all of our US shareholders and watchers a wonderful Thanksgiving. I had my turkey about a month ago, but I wish everyone a great holiday.
Hey, excellent. Kelly, it was great to catch up with you. Very interesting story. Make sure you tell Lizana hi for me, and look forward to getting this posted for you. And we'll stay up to date on the story. We'll look to schedule another one here in about the next quarter.
Right on. Well, thanks so much, Keir. Really appreciate it. And thanks for having me on.
Thank you.